10,137 words. Today, I'm ready to begin scene 13 of draft 2 of my young adult fantasy that I call my magical mystery. We are now going to begin trying to tackle one segment of the 96 story segments left in the story, one per day for the next 96 days. We started trying to do that in my last video, and it didn't go very well. So today, we're going to start fresh, trying to do one scene or one piece of connective tissue per day for the next 96 days. I believe whatever 96 divided by 2 is, there is that many scenes left in the story, and then I'm just telling myself that the story goes scene, connective tissue, which is why I doubled that to get 96, but I'm not actually sure if every scene gets connective tissue. We're just going to encounter them as we go, and then if some scenes don't have connective tissue and there's just a break in the story, we can just, skip ahead and get more than one segment of story done per day, which will be nice, and we're going to need that because we've been going slow. So, starting today with scene 13. Alright, I was just checking my math again. There are 50 scenes currently that I have labeled in draft 2, and if I assume every one of those gets a piece of connective tissue, that's 100 segments of story. I started this version of draft 2 on scene 6, and I'm about to start scene 13, which means I've done 7 scenes and their respective connective tissue, which means that equals 14. And 100 minus 14 is actually 86, not 96, which means we are making fast progress. So if theoretically we could get this done 10 days sooner than I was expecting, but also theoretically that means I just get 10 more days of leeway because I'm trying to get this done by the end of May. But I just wanted to let you know, in case anybody was doing the math at home and was like, wow, you're wildly wrong. Yes, I was wildly wrong, and I'm sorry. So my first step will be to read scene 13 as it is so that I can get a feel of what is currently in the draft. Also, if you watched my last video, I skipped the connective tissue between scenes 12 and scene 13, so we're still just skipping that. Scene 13 starts kind of floating in space, but that's fine for draft 2. We will deal with everything else later. So scene 13 and its connective tissue both already existed in draft 2, and they are 1,016 words. I just read them, and nothing needs to change. So I'm going to mark them as done for draft 2 because they are done for draft 2, and I get to move directly into scene 14. We are making quick progress, which is some easy wins that we needed because we were making slow progress in the last video. So I'm moving on to scene 14. So let's talk about scene 14. It currently exists with its connective tissue in draft 2. It's 914 words long with its connective tissue. But I'm not sure how to tackle it. I haven't read it yet, but I know from my outline that what scene 14 is this scene that might be considered like my darling, and I might have to kill it, but I'm not sure I'm ready to do that yet in draft 2. Again, I haven't read it, but I remember like all the previous times that I've been working on this story, I really liked this scene, but I kept coming to the conclusion that it can't work for the way the story currently is with the way that scene 14 currently functions. Like the purpose, the flow of scene 14 can't work with the way the story is currently set up. And I knew this was a problem with scene 14, and I've never wanted to change it because I liked it. Again, I haven't reread it yet, but I'm sort of thinking I'm gonna leave it still and tackle the kill your darlings thing in a future draft. I'm only on draft 2. I don't have to make those changes yet. And I also have this like tiny little idea of how it might work with the story, and that could just be me trying to force it to fit into a story that it actually doesn't fit into. But again, I'm not sure I have to make that change right now in draft 2, so I'm gonna read it, see if I still like it, see if I think that little way that it could possibly work in the story could work, although I'm not gonna know if it works until I do my pacing draft. Scenes 9 through 12, if you watched my last video, are gonna have to be retackled in my pacing draft because those scenes, the pacing was all wrong and I wasn't sure how to fix it, and I'm still not quite sure how to fix it, and I won't know how to fix it until I'm tackling pacing as a whole, rather than just trying to write a complete readable draft, which is what draft 2 is. And the problem with scene 14 isn't necessarily pacing, but I still think I could tackle it in draft 3. But I'm gonna read it and just see. Okay, so I finished reading scene 14. I had to cut one little section that no longer fits with where the scene is in the story, and then I added like 2 lines. But then, other than that, I think it can stay the same for scene 2. I mean, for draft 2, at least for now. I think there's like a lot of ifs going into this, but if 11 and 12, scenes 11 and 12, get moved above scene 9 and 10, then that will work in scene 14's favor and it can stay the way it is. But also, that won't be enough for it to work. The other thing that will have to work in order for scene 14 to stay the same is that this idea for a pull-through thread that I have come up for like scenes 15 through 18, if I can make that work, then scene 14 can definitely stay the same. I don't know if I will be able to make that work because I haven't tried implementing that pull-through thread yet into those scenes. It's what I'm going to be trying to do next, but I think potentially I won't have to cut scene 14 because I just like it. I like it. So after that, scene 14 is now 955 words with its connective tissue, and I'm marking it done for draft 2. Moving on to scene 15. For the last several days, I haven't walked on the treadmill because my knee has been hurting so bad, but I think I am going to try doing that today, so that's what I'm going to do now, and then we're going to get right into scene 15. We are making just massive progress today. Okay, so scene 15 is 953 words with no connective tissue. I just read it. I haven't made any changes. I'm not sure, like, what it needs or if it needs anything for draft 2. I don't know. I don't think it needs connective tissue at the end of scene 15. I think scene 16 is going to need connective tissue at the start of that, if that makes any sense. But I think I might leave a little blank on my list and not put a green dot next to the connective tissue because I don't think it needs it there. I think it works for now, at least with this break in the narration. I'm feeling a little bit concerned because I didn't start weaving in this pull-through thread that I need to work into these scenes in order for A, the scenes to work, and B, for scene 14 to be able to stay the same as it is now. So hopefully the next 3 scenes get this pull-through thread applied successfully and then my problems will be solved. But if not, then I might need to come back to this scene and rethink some things. Okay, it is much later. It is the same day. I did decide to mark scene 15 done on my little list for draft 2 because I do think it's done. I don't think it needs anything. It ends with a break in the narration, which I like. I haven't read scene 16, but I just looked at it in the document. It's currently 1,031 words, and it definitely needs some connective tissue at the start of it and at the end of it. I don't know at the end of it for sure, but because I haven't read it, but at the beginning it definitely needs some kind of introduction because right now it's just floating in space, and it doesn't need to be floating in space. I am like getting pretty tired now, so I'm not sure I'm going to work on scene 16 today, but I just wanted to let you know. I also watched Shaylin Bishop's video on narrative summary again. I've watched it a few weeks ago because the majority of this connective tissue is going to be made up of narrative summary, and narrative summary is so intimidating to me, and I'm not innately good at it, so I needed some motivation via that video, and it is helpful, but I don't know. I'm feeling just not sure how to start scene 16. I think it's the problem because right now scene 16 is just living just in the middle of the abyss with no grounding in the story, so it definitely needs some grounding in the beginning before the scene starts, and then who knows what it's going to need at the end. But it's currently 1,031 words long. I haven't read it, but I did mark off scene 15 as done on my list. That's the only update so far. Okay, so I just finished reading what scene 16 currently is, and it definitely needs work because it cuts off just without any kind of resolution or purpose for the scene right now. There's important world building in the scene that needs to be in the book, but it's not actually a scene yet because nothing happens. There's no build or conflict or resolution or anything happening in this scene. So it definitely just cuts off in the middle before any important information or events happen. So I'm going to need to think something up for scene 16, which is a little bit overwhelming. But it's also going to need connective tissue at the beginning and then probably at the end. I don't know what's going to be at the end of the scene yet because half of the scene does not yet exist. So I'm going to need to do something. I did want to say though that a little while ago today I had this little thought for a little piece of world building that I could put into book 2 in order to expand the world in book 2, which is actually really exciting because even though it's not like a plot at all, it's just this little bit of world building that will be able to expand the world a little in book 2. Before that, I did not have a singular thought about anything that could be going on in book 2. So that's pretty exciting. But I will not be able to get there until I finish scene 16 in draft 2 of book 1. So that's where we are. I'm not sure I'm going to do any more tonight because I'm tired and I truly don't know what to put in scene 16. I don't know how to turn it into a scene now. Right now it's kind of just like world building and no scene. There's no like event or conflict or anything. So that's not good. Hopefully that means there will be some way for me to weave in this pull through thread that I'm going to be trying to put into these scenes because there's a lot of room for expansion in this scene. Something needs to be happening, but right now none of that exists on the page and it's feeling a little overwhelming to try to do right now because it's kind of late. So this might be a tomorrow task, but that's where we are. So this is the next day. Last night I didn't end up doing any more work on scene 16, but I did have 3 good thoughts. The first was I got an idea for a little bit of plot for book 2 that would work with the little bit of world building that I developed. So that was exciting. With that, I also got a little bit of idea for plot for book 3. So that was actually really good because up until last night, I had never had any thoughts for book 2 and 3 of the magical mystery. So that was good. My second good thought was I got an idea of like a gist or like potential content for the bit of connective tissue that needs to come before scene 16. So I just wrote that down as a note, but I didn't attempt to like make connective tissue just because connective tissue is hard for me. So, but I got an idea for like what could potentially be part of the connective tissue. So that was good. And then finally, I remembered that there was a scene further on in the novel. It's actually scene 28 that is in my outline, but I had never ever felt like it was in the right place. Whenever I came to it, it always felt wrong. And so I decided that I'm actually going to take scene 28 and combine it with scene 16 so that scene 16 has some meat in it and like a point and isn't just like lore. And it will also give me a way to weave in this pull through thread that I'm hoping to weave into scenes 16 through 18. So that was good. Scene 28 was only 440 words because it was always just like a little blob of something that I'd stuck there that never ever felt right. So I pulled literally all 440 words up and I'm going to recombine them with scene 16 to make a complete scene. Which does mean when I get to scene 28, I'm going to have to write it from scratch, but I was always going to have to write something from scratch for that because A, it was just a little blob of scene, and B, it never ever felt right. Even when I was making the outline, I just left it there because it didn't have like huge story implications like the mystery pillars, but it was gonna have to be rewritten no matter what. So now I get to actually make use of it and combine it with scene 16. So that is my plan for today. I had a bunch of good thoughts last night, which does feel good because it feels like it gives me a starting point for today. So that's the goal. Okay, it is now much later. Oh no, he left. I haven't yet done any work on scene 16. I've been feeling very lethargic today, but I did just walk my 2 miles, and I'm feeling a little bit better now, even though I am actively laying down. But I had like secret plans of doing scene 16 and scene 17 today, but that was clearly just too ambitious. So I'm still hoping to get through scene 16, although I haven't even opened my document yet today. But that's what we're doing next. Okay, it is now 8 p.m. and I finally just finished the connective tissue that comes before scene 16, which means I am now ready to actually begin working on scene 16. I had been hoping that I'd be able to do this faster. I know I breezed through a lot of segments of story yesterday, but I really need these early wins because when I get to the last third of the book, or more than that, pretty much all of the scenes and all of the connective tissue are going to have to be written basically new from scratch. So I was hoping this would go a little bit faster, but I'm still slightly hopeful that I'll be able to finish scene 16 tonight, but it is looking less and less likely. So okay, it is the next day. Last night, I was able to finish scene 16, and I think it's potentially going to end with just a break in the narration and not a piece of connective tissue. I'm not feeling as confident about it as I have the previous couple of scenes, but it's done for draft 2. I marked it as done. With the connective tissue in the beginning, it is currently 1,925 words long. I also decided to mark done on my list the piece of connective tissue between scenes 15 and 16, because even though scene 15 ended with a break in their narration, I spent a lot of time writing the connective tissue at the start of scene 16, so I just counted that on my list, because why not? It's my list. So that's what we did. Scene 17, I haven't read yet, but it is currently 1,048 words long. It doesn't have connective tissue. And then scene 18 does not yet exist at all in the story, which is just kind of looming on the horizon as something bad that I'm going to have to tackle in the upcoming days, maybe. So part of the problem that I've been having is I've been trying to weave in this pull-through thread in scenes theoretically 15 through 18, even though I didn't really start doing it until scene 16, because these scenes have always just been like plunk, plunk, plunk in the story of just like dense world building and exposition, and I never knew how to make them feel like scenes and not just like information, you know? And it always felt like odd that they were all just piled right on top of each other, but I don't know where else in the story they could go. They feel like they need to be right on top of each other. So I recognize that that's partly an issue I'm going to have to deal with when I'm dealing with pacing, so I'm just going to deal with that in the third draft, my pacing draft. And I recognize that I'm putting a lot of faith in my third draft, but that is what the future is for. So the pull-through thread that I'm trying to implement into these scenes to make them feel more like part of the story and not just like heavy exposition, I was able to begin working on and like putting it into scene 16. I'm hoping to continue doing it in scene 17 and 18. I'm just starting to be a little bit concerned that the pacing is going to feel wrong if this pull-through thread is trying to link all of these scenes and it's like too much or something. I don't know, but again, I'm not going to be able to know that until I'm like focused on pacing. And right now I'm just kind of getting inklings that the pacing could be wrong, but I will deal with that in the pacing thread. So I think I'm going to continue. I haven't read scene 17 yet, but I think I'm going to continue trying to implement this pull-through thread in scene 17, and then whatever scene 18 ends up being, hopefully it will have pull-through thread. I was going to say like, or a culmination of that thread, but that thread can't culminate there, so I honestly don't know. But we're going to begin today by being happy that we finished scene 16 and reading scene 17 and then seeing how we can implement this thread and trying not to worry if the pacing is off or if it still feels like these are just like plunk, plunk, plunk scenes of exposition, because I feel like I can tackle that in the pacing draft and we're not there yet. So that's what we're gonna do today. Also, I redid my math. My math earlier was all wrong. So for some reason when I made this little chart, I'd only written 50 scenes, even though the draft has 55. Like my outline has 55. So that was my mistake, but I corrected my chart. So there are 55 scenes in the story, which means there's a total of 110 segments of scene connective tissue, scene connective tissue. And because I started on scene 6 and I just finished scene 16, that means, get out my notebook, I have 88 segments of story left. Scenes and connective tissue. Starting today, there are 98 days until the end of May, and I'm hoping to be finished with draft 2 by the end of May, because I'm pretty sure I started draft 2 in June 3 years ago, which is just like a shocking amount of time to spend on a draft 2. I recognize that like it's possible to spend that long on a draft 1 when you're still like figuring out the story, but to spend 3 years on draft 2, my word, that is too much time. So hopefully I can get done with draft 2 before the 3-year mark, but I don't know, we're just gonna have to see, I suppose. But we have 98 days until then, and well, I'm not sure like when specifically I started draft 2 3 years ago, but we have 98 days until the end of May, which is my goal, and I have 88 segments of story left. So that's where we are. Okay, to be fair, part of the reason why it has taken me going on 3 years to write draft 2 is because I took a year and a half away from it, and during that time I wrote literally an entirely other book, and I started another entirely other book and only got 35,000 words, but I wrote 1.5 books in my break. So it has been a total of 3 years, but also only actively working on it for like a year and a half. Still just entirely too long, I feel. So I would really like to be done with draft 2 by the time the 3-year mark rolls around. We're going to try to do scene 17 and its connective tissue today. When I ended scene 16, part of the reason I felt not great last night was because I wasn't sure how to connect scene 16 to scene 17, and so I ended up just writing scene 16 so that it ends with a break in the narration, so that scene 17 can just begin without needing connective tissue between the two. But obviously that could have been the wrong choice. But again, I will deal with that later. So I'm going into scene 17 feeling a little bit less confident because I wasn't sure really how to connect it to scene 17, and now it's just gonna kind of begin with no connection, but hopefully I can weave this ongoing thread of a pull through between the scenes into scene 17 and make it feel more like it's connected and also like it has purpose. So we're just gonna see. We're gonna see what the content of scene 17 is, and then begin trying to work in this pull through thread. Just see what happens. Alright, bad news, kids. I just read scene 17, and I think it needs to come before scene 16. Apparently, scene order is not something I'm ever going to get settled. But I think I'm actually going to make that change now and not wait for the pacing draft because it feels like a much smaller change than dealing with moving scenes 11 and 12 above scenes 9 and 10. So I'm just going to do it now and see if it still feels right, see if the pull through thread still feels right. Part of the reason why I think it needs to move is because the tone of scene 17 is much lighter than the tone of scene 16, and I think it would make more sense for them to be switched, especially with this pull through thread supposedly like building tension. It would make sense for scene 16 to be lighter than scene 17, so in order for that to happen, the two scenes need to switch. So I'm going to do that now, but also the current scene 17 that I'm making be scene 16 ends again abruptly halfway without like any kind of real event taking place, which was contributing to them feeling like plunk 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 scenes. So I am going to need to think up another half of scene 17 after I move it into scene 16's place, the same as I had done for scene 16 yesterday. So that's where we are. Okay, I haven't made any progress yet on scene 17/16, but I have just started reading this writing craft book called Alone with All That Could Happen by David Jauss. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but so far this is an excellent book. I only have just started it, but I'm loving it. I'm planning on doing like a recent reads type of video in the future once I have read enough books to make a video. Partly to get me out of my reading slump, but also just because I think it's interesting. But I'm definitely going to include this because I'm like really, really loving this writing craft book. That's the update. It is the next day. Last night, he doesn't like to be locked in here while I film, and he also doesn't like to be locked out, so I never know what to do. Poor thing. But last night I was able to finish scene 17. I'm not feeling as confident again. My confidence in my scenes has been going down the more that I've been doing them, but I did finish it. Let me just check my notes here. So it started at 1,048 words, and now it's at 1,836 words, which means I added 788 words to the scene. Which is good because it didn't have like a main event in the scene, and I'm not sure it does now. Like, I can't tell. Part of the reason I'm not feeling confident is I can't tell if I was just like bloating the scene and like adding dialogue without really having like a scene type event happen. But I don't, I just keep telling myself I can figure that all out later. So the scene for now is done. Scene 17, it's connective tissue. I actually did swap it with scene 16, so like that's all done. I'm hoping that the pull through thread that I've been trying to weave into these scenes is coming across and making them feel like, you know, a progression in the story and not just like a bunch of exposition scenes. My concern is that scene 18 does not exist. So today it is finally time to begin writing scene 18. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm very overwhelmed about writing a whole scene from scratch, even though I know that like the vast majority of the third act of this book is gonna have to be written from scratch. But I've been trying to tell myself that since scene 18 did not exist in draft 1, it's never existed before, that it doesn't have to be good quality right now. I'm still just writing a draft 1 quality scene, even though I'm in draft 2, because it's never existed before. So I'm trying to give myself that leeway. So scene 18 exists in the outline, but all it tells me to do is just like a little bit of lore that needs to be there. And not like a great event type of thing happening for a scene, you know? So, I don't know, maybe I'll watch Shaylin Bishop's video on how to write a scene and hopefully get some ideas, because right now, according to my outline, all I have for scene 18, just a little bit of lore, which is actually interesting because it comes right after the scenes that I have just been calling those plunk 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 scenes, because they're literally just like world building exposition scenes. And I've been trying to add that pull through thread to make them more like part of the story. And now that I'm saying all this, I realize that that is because draft one was just the arc of the setting and not really a story. And like draft one was really me writing the world, so it makes sense that I have all of these scenes that are just like, here's the world, because that's what I was writing. And now I'm like trying to put a story in the world, and I'm just not sure how much that's conveying right now, but I don't have to figure that out right now in draft two. In draft two, I'm still just trying to write the story, like a complete story with connective tissue that you could read from beginning to end, even if it's not good. And then later I can actually, like, you know, make it good. So because so much of draft two is going to have to be written from scratch because I scrapped like the last third of draft one, it's going to have, you know, first draft quality. So that's what I'm trying to tell myself. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect now. It doesn't even have to be good now. It just has to be. So for scene 18, I'm hoping I can get some kind of scene feelings going on and not end up writing just a bit of lore, because then in the future I'll have to come back the way that I have been coming back for scenes 16 and 17 and add like actual scene to it. And I'm not sure how effective I was doing that for scene 16 and 17 as of yet. I did try, but you know, we don't know. So time to begin writing scene 18 from complete scratch. There's just not an ounce of it that existed in draft one. It only exists in the outline, and it doesn't really even exist in my head because I don't know what to do for it. Okay, so far for scene 18, I have 100 words of notes and 150 words of scene. So we're making slow progress. I just wanted to say that today, and for the last two scenes, 16 and 17, that I was working on, I have been listening to music. If you've been following me at all, you would know that several months ago, I just straight up stopped listening to music. And part of that was because when I listen to music, I start feeling really creative, but then when nothing would come from that creative feeling, I would get really, really down. And so I literally just avoided listening to music because I was afraid of feeling creative and then having nothing to show for it. So it actually feels kind of like a relief to be listening to music again. But one of the things that listening to music does is it makes me want to start writing poetry, and that's fine, but it's not helpful for right now because I'm not trying to write poetry, I'm trying to write this book. So that's kind of where we are. I've been feeling kind of poetry feelings right now, but that could just be trying to avoid writing this scene, but that's where we are. Okay, it is the next day. Last night I was able to complete scene 18. It's currently 956 words long, so it's kind of a short scene, but not too much shorter than the scenes that I have been working with. There's no connective tissue, but I just had it end in a break in the narration, so there didn't need to be connective tissue. But I wrote an entire scene. I wrote almost 1,000 words yesterday. That is literally the best writing day I've had probably in years. Also, while I was writing yesterday, I got a little idea for something that could happen, or like make something happen in Act 3, which just felt so good. And there were several moments yesterday when I was writing where I just had that feeling of it's all coming together. And it just feels so good to have that feeling. It's just like such a relief to have that feeling about my writing after having struggled with writing for just so long. So, feeling really good today. And the scene 18 ends kind of on a turn, and I'm not sure if that turn happens too fast right now, but that's something I can deal with in the pacing draft. So all in all, I felt really good about it. I don't know if I said this, but I did end up watching Jalen Bishop's video on structuring a scene and also structuring a short story, because sometimes I feel like scenes or chapters are kind of like short stories. And then, I don't know, I was listening to music, I had written down the little bits of lore that I knew needed to be in the scene, and then somehow the scene just came out, and I don't know if it's a good scene. I haven't been letting myself go back and reread what I've written new this time, because that's like, you know, editing, and I'm still very much just kind of in a drafting phase, so I haven't been doing that, so it could all be terrible, and I might feel terrible about it later, but at the moment, I feel good. So, we are literally moving on to scene 19. Okay, I just finished reading scene 19. I haven't made any changes to it yet. It's currently 2,382 words long, which is significantly longer than the scenes I have been working with. It doesn't have any connective tissue. The previous scene ended on a narrative break, so it didn't really need connective tissue at the start. It's definitely going to need it at the end, but scene 19 was that scene, if you remember from a few weeks ago, where it was supposed to be the first scene where my main character and my primary antagonist interact for the first time, but they're both in the scene and they don't interact at all. And I just read it and I'm still not sure if they need to interact. But I also feel like it's a pacing problem, but not necessarily. I know in the future I'm going to have a whole draft for the subplot of the relationship between my main character and the primary antagonist, so I'm not super worried about that right now because the way that I edit is in layers, and there's going to have to be a whole draft for the layer of their relationship, so I don't necessarily have to determine whether or not they interact in this initial scene, and I'm pretty fine with that because that's just not the purpose of this draft. This draft is just for connective tissue and writing the scenes that don't yet exist. Also, scene 20 was the scene where I had to move down a bunch of scenes, a bunch of snippets from an earlier scene, like scene 20 used to happen way up here and now it's happening way down here in the story. And so scene 20 is just like extremely piecemeal right now. I'm not planning on going all the way to scene 20 today or anything, but I'm also not sure if I'm going to tackle the connective tissue between 19 and 20 just because scene 20 is very much just in the idea phase of a scene right now. So scene 19 currently ends really abruptly. A lot of the scenes that I've encountered end really abruptly because when I was writing them in the first draft, I wasn't sure of the purpose of the scenes, so they didn't have like a natural, arc and culmination and everything. So I think I am going to have to smooth that out in scene 19 before I can call it done. But overall, at the moment for this draft, I kind of like it. Like I'm still on the fence, but I'm not really sure if my main character and the primary antagonist need to interact, even though they're both in this scene. But that's where we are. Alright, so I ended up adding about 130 words to the end of scene 19. So now it sits at 2,513 words. Instead of having it end abruptly, I'm having it transition into the connective tissue. I haven't started writing the connective tissue yet. But I also decided that for this draft, this scene serves its purpose. Because I don't have a full idea yet of the arc of the relationship between the main character and the primary antagonist, I'm not going to decide to change that now because I like the scene as it is, and I wouldn't really know how to change it yet because I'm not focusing on that arc. So for draft 2, scene 19 is complete. And I checked, and in this video so far, I have addressed 10,137 words in draft 2. 10,000 words! Started at scene 13 and we got all the way through scene 19. Not the connective tissue after scene 19, but still through scene 19. And I'm not even sure how many days this vlog has been covering, like 4 days maybe? 3 days? Not very long! And I have gotten done 7 scenes of the story. 7 scenes! That's more than I got done like all of last year. So coming into draft 2, this go around, it was 52,000 words. So 10,000 words, that's like 1/5 of what draft 2 was that we have covered in this vlog. That is so huge. And I know, like, going into the third act, it's going to be slower going because I'm going to have to be writing scenes from scratch. But I wrote a scene from scratch in this vlog and it didn't go terribly. And I'm just feeling overall like very good. 10,000 words. Please like and subscribe. Also, I do offer fiction editing on Fiverr, anything from short stories or single chapters to whole novels. If anybody has a story out there that they'd like for me to look at, please check out the link in the description box below. Thank you!